everyone, and welcome to the E2 podcast. No, so you still getting that music on your side? Oh, there we go. All right.
Damn.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the E2 podcast, man. We're excited today. We have our guest, Mr. Josh Fleig. Man, welcome to the podcast, CIO of LED. We appreciate you, man, being on the podcast today.
Thank you, man. I'm excited. Thank you guys for having me, Leroy. This is it's fun when we get to hang out. So I'm glad we get to do it and we get to go deeper on all the things. So thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we have two things on. Hold on one second.
Yep.
Now, okay. And that's on my end, man. I had another screen open with us running on both sides. Okay, perfect. Can you hear me now?
I got you. Yeah, loud and clear.
Excellent, man. Excellent. So, man, I've had the opportunity to kind of meet you through the Greater New Orleans Inc. Once we came in through that partnership. So I kind of knew you before you moved to that CIO space. But what I wanted to kind of do is kind of walk back and kind of give our listeners a concept of, how you got to Louisiana, like where you grew up at, man, and just like how did, at a time like this when, how is it being right here, right now, being able to in a position to help the state? How is that? How does it feel to be in that space right now?
Yeah. Well, it feels awesome. And it feels like there's a lot of stars aligning and a lot of good things happening at once. But yeah, let me start back at the beginning
Mhm.
and jump in if I'm going too slow because I love the origin story stuff, man. It's
Yes.
always fun to talk about. So I was born and raised in Memphis, in Tennessee, and my mom, when I was let's see here, about between eighth and ninth grade, remarried a guy who had as a serial entrepreneur. He had a business buying and selling used oil filled drilling pipe. And so he ran that business out of Lafayette, Louisiana. So we packed it up, moved to Lafayette, and this would have been mid 90s, early 90s, 93, 94, something like that, when we got to Lafayette. It was a different world. I mean, I was deep in Cajun country. This is pre-internet and cell phones, and I couldn't pronounce any of the names or any of the streets or any of that kind of stuff. And I'm also a teenager, right? I didn't want to leave
Yeah.
home. I didn't want to leave my friends. But it
And what
felt
high school did
different.
you go to?
Lafayette High. So I
Okay.
started at Lafayette High, finished Lafayette High.
Mhm.
And still, man, it's amazing because two or three of my best friends today, I met when we were 14 years old playing football at Lafayette High School.
Okay.
So still friends. Went to LSU for undergrad, studied art history of all things, and really wanted to be, I wanted to be. It's an interesting story. So I get to LSU.
Mhm.
They, I tell the counselor at the time, I'm like, look, I really want to make movies. And they're looking through the course catalog, everything's paper, right? And they're looking through things, and they're like, well, we don't really have that. How about art history? And I thought, I mean,
Hmm.
that's the best you got, I guess. And I actually really enjoyed it, and I got into it. And I got out of LSU, ended up teaching high school for the first few years of my career, and I landed in a really interesting place. And here's where I got interested in technology. I'd always kind of been a tinkerer,
Mhm.
and just a hobbyist. And I landed at a school in Baton Rouge teaching. It was a school called St. Joseph's Academy,
Mhm.
and we got very lucky. And this was like late 90s, 99. One of the alumni from that school she was married to a man in Dallas who started a fund called Seven Rosen Funds. His name was LJ7, one of the co-founders of that funds, and he was some of the original money behind compact computers.
Mm.
And so they had endowed this school with some money to go build the first one-to-one laptop program in the state of Louisiana at the time. It's common now, but was not common back in 1999, 2000. And they rolled out all this technology. They brought in a guy from Los Alamos in New Mexico to help design the network topography and a wireless campus. And all this stuff was sort of groundbreaking at the time. And what they didn't have was really anything at that application layer. So we had this hardware. What were we doing with it? And what were we making with all these new computers? And the productivity stuff was easy because we knew that Microsoft Office was going to be helpful. And people could write things. We're teaching kids how to use spreadsheets and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
But what else? And so I ended up inheriting the what else department. So the art history teacher was the only other person on campus who knew anything about multimedia.
Okay.
And I ended up teaching a lot of multimedia classes, building a whole multimedia program there. But I was young. I mean, I was probably 25, 26 years old, and I got to play with a bunch of really fun, cameras and editing equipment and all kinds of stuff. But I knew I didn't know a lot. I was kind of making stuff up.
Right.
So I ended up going back to school. I ended up moving to New York and going to NYU, and into a really interesting program at NYU called Interactive Telecommunications.
Okay.
It's really the exploration of art and computer science. So
Mm.
it's a fascinating, half the people there were artists, half were computer scientists, and we're just making stuff. I mean, that was like it's where I really learned how to kind of get out of my own way and not worry about perfect, just worry about prototyping quickly.
Mhm.
And I ended up coming out of that program and landed a job at NBC Universal there in New York, right at 30 Rock, and I was on a really cool team that was called the Interactive Media Product Development Team.
Mhm.
So we built, we were kind of a skunk works for how to make TV shows more engaging for NBC Universal and all of its different, cable channels.
Mhm.
How do we kind of transcend just the shows that you're watching and drive more user engagement? So we were constantly experimenting with stuff, and a lot of it wasn't that popular. We would do these like synchronous flash-based kind of games that if you pulled up a computer, you could kind of play along while you watch the show. But people had to like go get their laptop and they had to open it up and
Yeah.
install Flash and then create an account. And by the time you did all that stuff, the moment was kind of gone.
Mhm.
It just didn't work that well. We were
Flash took a
doing
lot of moments, man. Flash took a
that.
lot of moments. Yeah.
And people hated it, right? Like
Yeah.
Flash was like a necessary evil that like people just hated. And so we were building cable box applications that were inside of people's cable box. I don't know if you remember the old cable remotes. It had like the four colored, like it'd be like a blue square and
Yeah.
a yellow triangle on it. And
Mhm.
no one ever knew what those buttons did.
Right.
Well, those buttons actually, were the hardware controller for an application layer inside the cable box called EBIF, and it was just a standard protocol to record those keystrokes, send them back to the cloud somewhere, render some action and push it back. So you can vote on a TV show with those, or whatever. Well, no one even knew that they were supposed to use those things.
Mm.
It didn't work. But what did work was text message. Everyone at this point, this is pre-iPhone, but everyone had a phone that could text. Texting was blowing up. This is back when they were selling text message buckets, where you would pay for 1,000 text messages a month or whatever. This is before the days it was all you could eat. But it was super popular. Everyone could do it. The learning curve was minimal. And so we ended up running these text to television campaigns where you would vote someone off of an island,
Yeah.
on a reality TV show,
Yeah.
or you would vote on an MSNBC poll
Yeah.
after a debate. I worked there during Obama's first election,
Mhm.
and so this was like I guess '07 before he sworn into office, or maybe it was '07, '08, somewhere in that range.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we were running. He would have a debate, and then we would say, all right, who do you think won the debate? And people would text in, and it would say,
Yeah.
Mitt Romney or John McCain or Barack Obama. And we put all that stuff on screen. And so we did that whole full loop, and we designed the user experience. We integrated it in the TV shows. And then the writer's strike of '07 happened,
Mhm.
and reality TV blew up even more because they didn't need writers.
Mhm.
And we needed stuff, we needed to fill the airtime, but we didn't have writers. So we took Deal or No Deal and it went from 1 day a week to 5 days a week.
Mhm.
And we did a text to win campaign where we were basically saying before the commercial break, there would be a little 15-second bumpers, what they called them. And people would watch at home and they would be asked to enter, pick which case they thought the money was in and text that case
Mhm.
number into this short code,
Mhm.
63666 or whatever. And they would text it in and they were entered to win $10,000.
Mhm.
But we were charging them $1 that when we sent them that thank you for entering to win message back, we would send their carrier a message that says charge them $1.
Okay.
And we split that money with the carrier. So we took 50% and the carrier took 50%. We were making $1 million an hour on
Wow.
that product. It was the greatest. We thought we were geniuses. We were like, we've done it. We're giving away $10,000. We're billing $1 million. We're splitting that with the carriers. They're making money. We're making money. And now it's on 5 days a week because the writer's strike, right? And it worked really well until we got sued by like 25 states for lottery violations. We were
Mhm.
basically running an illegal lottery because
Okay.
we were charging people $1 on their cell phone bill to enter to win $10,000.
Yeah.
And the big states, Texas, California, those guys all over us.
Mhm.
So they sued NBC Universal, they sued the vendors, they sued the telcos, and we all settled and had to say, look, we'll keep doing this stuff, but we're not going to charge people anymore. We're just going to say it's fan engagement and maybe try to sell some ads against it and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
So I worked in that space for years. I left NBC Universal and went to a vendor that it was basically the SaaS platform underneath
Mhm.
that technology, and was with that company through ups and downs. We recapitalized that company, basically restarted that company. I was part of that, and sold it in 2012. And I was done. I was done working in television, man. It was just such a grind. It's 7 days a week. It's 365. I missed all the fun holidays and events because live TV doesn't stop for anybody.
Exactly. Well, I
So
want to do a quick recap though, Josh. Like, so this is interesting because we have this art history major, right?
mhm.
That's coming out that's doing the liberal arts side of things, that comes out, starts teaching, gets inspired because he's the only person that can put together the program for a tech process, right? For a tech presentation, for a tech program in the school.
Yep. Yep.
That process inspires you, and then before you know it, you're really working on a startup,
Yeah, 100%. I didn't
right?
know about it then, right? I didn't think about it that way, but we had some resources, we had some ideas, and no one else was going to do it, And
Right.
I just like let's do it, let's move. That's 100%. And look, I've never thought about it that way, right? We
Yeah.
just needed to move. We needed to do it.
I think, for us, obviously we're down here, now in Louisiana, like starting out as that art history major, I think that's a big deal. That speaks to a lot of people. I think that sometimes when
Mhm.
you see technology coming, you may not believe that it's going to be something that you can participate in. But regardless of what your background is, like just like you said, coming from that art history all the way over to a startup that is early estate, like the early forms of technology. I remember when you used to have to send a text back and they charge your bill and you get your bill and see, what you've done. I remember
Yep.
kids getting in trouble. You remember that? Because
Yep.
they was ordering stuff or voting
Oh
for
man.
videos on TV. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, the box. Yeah, there was a show, a channel called The Box where you could
yeah,
pay to vote your music video up to the top of the list.
yes, yes, man,
People
yeah,
ringtone subscriptions, man. People were paying $10 a month to have ringtone subscriptions and
right,
all kinds of they're buying ringtones. That was a moment in time, man.
yeah. So we're going back to because Lollipop at that time, which is a Lil Wayne, it's literally a Lil Wayne ringtone, was one of the
Yep.
biggest, hottest ringtones during that time. So I like this
Yep.
because now we're coming up to that founder who or founders who may have started out one way and now they found themselves in this space, in this technology space. Um, and so here we are. And now you're about to, after finishing that up in 2012, what are your thoughts then? Like how are you making your way either back to economic development or
Yeah.
are you back in school? Or tell me what's going on.
Yeah, so I had always kind of followed the news from home, right? I mean, I'm living up in New York, and in the meantime, I'd gotten married up there, and just built a life, built a network, and I thought, I was kind of deep in it. I thought I wasn't going to leave, but I just followed the news from home, and I was coming home for holidays and hanging out and stuff, and I met some folks that were working for the Secretary of Economic Development at the time, and this was kind of the beginning of, I guess, Bobby Jindal's second term in Louisiana. The guy who was running economic development for him was a guy named Stephen Moray.
Mhm,
Man, I was just really impressed with how smart and sophisticated those guys seemed.
mhm,
I'd never worked in state government, but my preconceived notion of state government folks was not good,
mhm.
frankly, right? Like I
Yeah.
thought, yeah, I thought, what, like nobody cool or smart's going to do that stuff, right? But I
Mhm,
was wrong. I was completely wrong. I was impressed with the way they thought about trying to make Louisiana a better place, and their hearts were in it, their minds were in it, and they were dedicated to it, and so I bought into their vision, and
mhm,
it ended up getting a job offer. It was initially a contract, so I was still living in New York, and they said, look, we're trying to, like, we just want to meet technology companies. I said, look, I know some because I'm up here in New York. It's not the Bay Area, but I'm in this intersection of kind of media and technology. I'm happy to
mhm.
make introductions, and so I ended up as a consultant for the state for probably about 6 months, something like that. It wasn't very long. And they called one day and said, "This is actually working out. Do you want to just do it all the time?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." And I went and told my wife that I thinking about taking a job in Baton Rouge, and she cried for about, I don't know, 3 weeks. She grew up in Baton Rouge, and she was like, "I'm
Yeah.
never going back to Baton Rouge."
Wow.
Yeah, true story. So she hated her job in New York, though. I said, "Look," I said, "Man, this is your way to this is your resignation path forward. Go quit your job." She
Mhm,
worked in translations in New York, and I said, "Look, let's go pick out somewhere to live," And we ended up living in the little Garden District area of Baton Rouge, and it was a neighborhood she didn't even know existed. And it's actually the
wow,
oldest neighborhood in Baton Rouge, and it just changed her whole perspective, right,
mhm,
on that place. She found a new set of friends. She got into a career path she really loved.
mhm.
And I just think that she just saw Louisiana from a different angle, and now it's no turning back. We love it, and we're not going anywhere. But so that was how I came home. I just met some friends at a party who worked for the economic development secretary at the time, and
Mhm.
I was just impressed with those folks. And my initial mission for the first few years was to go try to knock on the doors of tech companies and convince them to put in some kind of an operation in Louisiana.
Okay.
And the carrot was tax credits, effectively, right? So
Mhm.
you come here, you create jobs, we'll give you some incentive to do that.
And this was a time frame of 2016, 15.
So this was probably tail end of 2012,
Gotcha.
2013.
Gotcha.
So in that neighborhood, man, I did that for years. We built a strategy around it. It was interesting, right? I mean, economic development traditionally is about site selection and
Mhm,
heavy industry, manufacturing, important, big, major stuff that drives a lot of capital and creates a lot of jobs.
mhm.
But economic development agencies, even to this day, I'll say, haven't gotten their heads around the knowledge base industries, right? How do you build a knowledge base industry?
Wow.
Because it's not about site development, and it's really not even about tax credits. It's about brains.
Right.
And so it's hard, right? I mean, you're changing culture, you're changing, organizations that have been doing this thing for a very long time. But my job was to try to go figure it out. And so where we had failed initially was just being too broad in our approach,
Mhm,
right? We were just trying to, any tech company that would, take our meeting, we were out there putting our pitch in and saying, well, we got great tax credits, and our universities are creating, more computer science students, that were trending in the right direction, all that kind of stuff, and it
mhm.
just didn't work. So we took a step back, and we really we looked at it from a much more analytical perspective and said, this was about 10 years into major offshoring, right? So a lot of like the big major IT companies that were US based were
Yeah.
helping, to offshore a lot of their activity to India, and other
Mhm.
places, but largely India. And you started looking at some of the challenges after operating that model for a long time. Challenges are not only just working with people halfway across the globe,
Mhm.
um, but challenges with cybersecurity, right?
Mhm.
Some industries can't send their stuff offshore, even if it's
Mhm.
cheaper. If it's a lot of federal work can't go offshore. A lot of super sensitive stuff like healthcare, banking regulations
Mhm.
prevent people from offshoring stuff. So we said, look, how do we go talk to these big guys who would prefer to offshore work,
Mhm.
but through some regulatory reason or some security reason can't?
Mhm.
And so how do we position Louisiana to capture that work, right? So you got to be on shore because of whatever reason. Come to Louisiana to do that work, right? Like let us that was our value proposition because we think with our tax credits and the work they're trying to do, we're your next best option outside of India for some of this work.
Right.
And it kind of worked. I mean, it kind of worked in that we landed, IBM with that strategy. We landed who they've got now between Baton Rouge and Monroe. They've got somewhere around 1,000 people employed in Louisiana. We landed CGI. It was a Canadian company, but we landed their federal practice because we knew if they were doing federal work, that work had to be on shore.
Yeah.
800 people in Lafayette in that operation. And that was, man, here's a crazy story on that, Leroy. That was a cold call, that
Oh wow.
CGI project. Man,
Okay.
I mean, truly, it's funny because people today knock on cold calling and
Yeah.
doing like, sales the hard way.
Yeah.
And it is hard, man. It's a hard slog because you get told no, 99% of the time. That 1% of the time, and if you can begin to convert those and really work that, it's valuable. And so CGI led, there's 800 people in Lafayette that have a job because of a cold call.
Mhm.
And those kind of wins weren't frequent, but they kept us going for years. The GDIT work up in Shreveport. Back then it was CSRS. Then they did a merger, and GDIT bought them. But all of that stuff was part of that effort. They were doing cybersecurity work
Okay.
and for the federal government. And so we knew that those guys couldn't take that work to Hyderabad, you
Right.
know. And so we ended up going this very narrow strategy and saying, you want Bangalore, you're gonna get Baton Rouge. So that was
Hmm.
our that was our strategy for years. But
So
it's
Josh,
hard, man. It's
really, really quick question, man. So we got it. You start out in this industry. You like I said, we're basically a startup. Leave the
Mhm.
startup. You come down here. You redefine a market, but then you find out that you got to be a niche inside that market. You had to find like what's going to make us special to them outside of all the benefits that at that time
Yeah,
everything
yeah,
was
yeah,
going offshore. I work for a
yeah,
company where a lot of stuff was going offshore as well. So what
yeah.
would make us that perfect at that particular point in time for that automation? What will make us the perfect fit? And it seems like you said it was working. So we found our niche in this technology space before. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, it's possible. No, it is, and honestly, like I think we can win. The challenge that I had, administration changes, focus areas shift, that sort of thing,
Mhm.
and there's just fewer people on that mission, right? It got down to where it's just me,
Yeah.
and for a time, I mean, I have a couple good partners. In fact, I got to give a lot of credit to my buddy Grady at Fitzpatrick at GNO Inc. and
Mhm.
Michael Hecht
Okay.
because they hung in there with me, but
Mhm.
but for a while it was like there was just a few of us, hand waving and saying, no, tech is our future. We have to have a strategy. We have to be able to win. We have to be able to create, tech jobs in Louisiana. So there was a time when we were all full steam ahead, and then it just shifted under the next administration, and look, now it's back, right? I mean, now we're
Yeah.
back in this position. This that's awesome because we're fully aligned that, like, technology is our future in Louisiana. Full stop. And there's a way to win. There's a way to win.
And so one thing that I found when I first started, like again, was we first came on OHub, you was at GNO Inc. And one of the things I
Hmm.
noticed, 'cause I was, trying to build relationships in the different, I would parish by parish because I was like, okay, I need to figure out who is leading the charge per parish. Now, when I did that, Josh, you were signed up probably for about 5 or 6 different parishes at that time. You were directly connected to the economic development person in that
Yep.
space. So
Yep.
working with those smaller, so I guess the question now is going to be more along the lines of what did working with those smaller parishes and understanding their economic development need and having that background and innovation from a few years ago, how does all that mix together now in your understanding of where we are and our needs with innovation?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, man, it's such a here's the challenge. It's I feel deeply this is existential. If we're going to keep up as a state and be globally competitive, we it has to be led by technology. And so it's a cultural shift to get people to believe that same way, right? Because we're not
Yeah.
Louisiana is not known for being technologically innovative, or we're solutions oriented people for
Mhm.
sure. There's no doubt about that. But we need to create new technology products, and we need to modernize the things that we've been doing for a very long time, and we need to automate that stuff, and we need to sell that stuff here and in other places. And so there's a few spots around the state that get that, I think, fundamentally, and are rowing the boat with us now. But the power, if 64 out of 64 parishes can do that,
Mhm.
all of our institutions can buy into this. That's how we're going to get it done, because
Yeah.
it's about resources. It's about everyone, on the same page, pushing the same things.
Yeah.
And we get a lot done. We're not there yet, and it's going to take a while. And look, and not, one of our challenges too in a place like Louisiana is, we have urban parishes that
Mhm.
are cities, and those are, big, beautiful melting pots with a lot of different opinions and minds and all kinds of stuff. And
Mhm.
and those places will get it faster.
Mhm.
The other challenge is, we have small parishes too that, like, a few people, the challenge is they're not on the same page now.
Mhm.
But the upside is, the opportunity is, it doesn't take a lot of people to take a small parish and say this is going to matter to us.
Mhm.
It's going to matter to the companies that are in our, parish, to get them rowing in the same direction.
Yeah.
I mean, you live in New Orleans, this. Sometimes changing something in a market like New Orleans is hard, because you got to get a lot of consensus from a lot of different folks.
Mhm.
That's tough. I think some of the smaller parishes might get on board faster. So
I,
it's just figuring out what's their angle, what's their win, what's their unlock. Like, I mean, all those kinds of things. And you know this too. It's like, you guys can't be in every parish.
right.
It's physically impossible.
Right.
And so we end up going to the places where the people treat us the best, right? And people want
Right.
to work with us, and people, kind of get what we're trying to do.
Mm.
But no, the dream is, like, how do we do this in 64 parishes? Not there yet.
So with that being said, then that's the spring in LAIO, man. So right
Yeah.
now you're kind of leading that ship. I'm gonna really go basic. What is LAIO and why was
Yeah.
it created?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So we've been hand waving for a while. I
Mhm.
walked you through that whole story. When I took the job, I started July 1 of last year. I was very adamant um, that we need a brand and a division that is laser focused on technology led innovation.
Mhm.
That if it gets conflated with all the other stuff we have to do as a department, and that's important stuff, but we
Yeah.
got, but I don't want it, I don't want this effort to be conflated. I don't want it to die when the next administration might come along and say
Yeah.
that, no, we're going to shift things around. We need to be very deliberate to say this matters, and everyone needs to understand that like this is something new and it's something different. And then the people that are, have high potential to be part of this, right? So whether it's your, your research universities that need to do a better job of commercializing technology, whether it's your startups, whether it's your funders, whether it's your ESOs, like all of those folks need to see themselves in this effort,
Yeah.
and they need to feel like heard, and they need to feel like their needs are being met or addressed, or at least trying to improve things.
Mhm.
And it's hard to do that when you're in something big and amorphous like economic development.
Mhm.
It gets lost. And that's why we created the name Louisiana Innovation and the website la.io. It matters to have our own thing, because the people that are going to help us need to see themselves in that effort, and it
Yeah.
needs to be called out as its own thing. It needs to be named. So it's as simple as that. And I just love, we just got a really awesome URL. We wrestled it away from some domain
Yeah.
squatters in Eastern Europe
Yeah.
who were just sitting on
That's
it.
really cool. Yeah, man. The branding across the board. Like I saw the shirts, the whole nine. I need two shirts, by the way. I need one, well, probably maybe
Got
three. I
you.
need one for me and one for Nikki. And I have
I
another
got you.
person too. So I'm gonna figure out how to
You
how to get one of those.
you text me your mailing address. I'm gonna stick some in the mail to you. I
I
got you.
appreciate it. You got it.
No, it's
So
it's cool, man. I actually worked with a local New Orleans group to do all the design work. A group called Monday and Partners,
okay.
and it's a one man band. Dude works out of the shop, does really good work. And he was the one negotiating with the group in Eastern Europe to get that domain under our control, and did all the design work and did everything. So got him Dylan DeBona. I'll give him a shout out, man. He's awesome.
Most definitely, man.
So
And then we'll take Dylan's name too, because everybody's always, I think, looking for swag or some kind of apparel. So
yeah.
we'll definitely pass his name around the ecosystem.
Good. Yeah, he's a good dude. I'm trying to help him out. We try to use as many Louisiana folks, small businesses, startups as we can,
Yeah.
because we got to kind of be about it, not just talk about it, I guess.
So we know, and then one a quick shout out, man, for sure, to our Secretary Bourgeois, who has done her first year has been pretty much out of control. I mean, I think the first when I was watching my emails, because I signed up for the LED newsletter, it was like event after event after event, like I need a new company, a new investor, new company coming in. So, and those are the ones that people may not hear a lot about, but we got three major projects where you go, we have Meta in the north, we have Hyundai coming to Ascension Parish, and then we also have, I think, is First Solar? First Solar is going to be down in New Iberia
Yeah.
right now. All
Yeah.
billion-dollar plus companies coming in, but then we also have the other opportunity, other growth that other companies have already committed to coming here as well, man. Like, so with technology being such a big part of it, man, like how do you see LAIO connecting like our community, our like our student, everything that we're doing here when it comes to our state, like the folks who are going to be our next generation or our future innovators. How do we see LAIO creating that path of connecting them to these new industries, these new opportunities that are taking place?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a bunch of different answers to that. So I want to be in a position where we're focusing on uh, helping our ecosystem partners, right? So we're not good at dealing with startups directly, meaning I don't have a team that's big enough. I don't have the reach across the state. Um, but my customer is you guys. It's OHub, it's Idea Village, it's EAP in Shreveport. It's the ESOs that are in the trenches doing the work with startups. Those are our customers. Those are our partners in this effort. The universities that are, the top of the funnel, pushing out students, pushing out talent, pushing out research, working with those guys on both the talent level and on the commercialization front. Like we all got to do a better job commercializing some of that research. That's critical. My dream is, I want to be exporting this stuff. I want somebody cutting a ribbon on something that a Louisiana company put in their state, you
Okay.
know?
Yeah.
And like that's the dream, is like our Meta going to Nevada and opening
Yeah.
up a $10 billion data center. That's a long game. That's a long game, and politics doesn't have a whole lot of patience for long games. But I'm trying to steer the ship to think about this as building that foundation and supporting the companies that are out there like OHub building this for the future. Because what we're missing in Louisiana are headquarters. Frankly, we don't have enough headquarters here, and headquarters are the gold standard in economic development because they create the most jobs, the highest paying jobs. They control the capital, which means they control their future and their destiny, um, all the way down to the stuff that we don't think about, like the philanthropy from a headquarters is
Yeah.
generally condensed around their headquarters, right? Like they do stuff. I mean, Google does stuff all over the world, I'm sure, but they do more stuff in California,
Oh
right?
yeah.
I mean, just like Entergy is headquartered in New Orleans. They operate in 4 states. Where do you think most of their philanthropy goes?
Yeah. Right here. Yeah.
And so, like all that stuff matters, but we don't have enough of that, and we don't. It's kind of, coming full circle. I love talking about the energy piece. It's like if we want to, we lost the game in terms of controlling our own destiny for traditional energy, right? Like that, Houston owns that space. Now the good news is they're nearby, but it's still not Louisiana. But we're betting on is we're at a turning point in energy right now, right? But absolutely at a turning point. So let's start building the Houston for new energy here.
Right.
So that in 15 or 20 years, those headquarters are here. And people think of Louisiana as a place you go for all things, future energy, all things lower carbon and battery and hydrogen and whatever. When it doesn't matter. But like the reality is that's what we got to build. That's the vision. The stuff today, when you see like Hyundai and Meta doing these big operations, we're also just trying to do the simple stuff better. Like we have a page on our site now where small businesses and vendors can go and put their information in as these opportunities are going to start materializing over the next couple of years,
Wow.
so
Okay.
that they're primed to compete for work. Whether it's on the construction side or it's post construction, and these things are open and they're buying materials from local organizations. We just want to make sure that they're buying as much local stuff as they possibly can. And so that work's happening, now. That's not even that just takes some intentionality and some
Right.
planning. That's not even complicated.
Right.
But we got to continue to make that process better, is making sure that like vendors, small businesses are feeding into these companies.
Yeah. And just again to the LED like certification process, I've watched some friends go through it. I have watched I think is it the Ready program? Fast Start? Is it Fast Start?
Yeah, the Fast Start program. Yep.
So we got the Fast Start program, and then we have a lot of certification programs for vendors that want to work with the state. And then that's like definitely if you have a business and you're curious, get on the LED website. Ton of resources on that website. I mean, I've seen it paved for veterans. I mean, just a lot of different resources there for different folks to really get an eye on how LED is helping our small businesses get aligned with the big opportunities that are coming. And I think I use the differentiate between small and big because there may be some work in the middle that we can do. And I think that there's some programs out there that you guys have that are really helping folks do that work in the middle to get them prepared for those larger opportunities too.
100%. We got to continue to improve how we get small businesses to level up,
right?
Because it's also, and that cuts 1,000 ways too, right? It's, there's a lot of work to be done just getting our small businesses to understand how to button up some of their, certifications, their paperwork, some of the things that they have to do to just go behind the fence line at some of these major industrial, places. Because those guys aren't joking. You want to go work inside Shell. It's a lot of paperwork, right? It's a lot of things that you got to have ready to go. But the opportunities are big. And so I think stay tuned. We've got some interesting stuff in the works there to kind of continue to help, companies get ISO certifications, companies make sure that like they have an ESG plan somewhere, because guess who's going to ask about your ESG plan? Chevron, those guys they need to know.
Yeah.
So it's just making sure that we're leveling folks up so they can be competitive. And then, another piece on that kind of level up stuff are the people that are building their own thing, right? It's how do we automate and modernize, some of these folks that are manufacturing stuff here.
Yeah.
I was down at a really cool steel fabricators operation down in St. Bernard Parish a couple weeks ago, and like a ton of their steel is ending up in Tesla's Gigafactory in Austin. It's a big deal for this small, family owned business, and they're having a hard time just keeping up with demand.
Yeah.
And you go in their facility, and they got one robot doing some work to drill holes, at the end point. They still got a lot of manual process work, right? They still got a lot of manual measuring of things that like lasers can do very, very well. But they need someone to go in there and say, here's exactly how we can, with a couple tweaks and not millions of dollars, but a little bit of money, we can modernize this thing so that you can sell more stuff to Tesla. Because I'm betting on, in the immediate run, if we can help these guys automate, they will expand and they will hire more people and do more things. They're constricted by the fact that like you can only do so much, with manual way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to really lean in on modernizing and upgrading on some of our legacy industries. And these are the small businesses that kind of, they still make stuff. They're just making stuff the old way.
Yeah. And it's not going to be one way or the other. That's another thing I think when we start talking about AI, everybody thinks that all the traditional stuff is going to go away. I mean, transportation is still going to be transportation. You're still going to have trucks driving stuff up and down the road.
Right.
There's still going to be supplier chains. There's still going to be different things that people right now supply. And I also see this opening up for our industry partners too, man. Like, I think our industry partners are going to become more insular and working with the local small businesses as well, as we, get our small businesses in the place to take advantage of those opportunities too. The point you make is super excited about that company having all that opportunity, but that company is like a lot of other companies right now. That opportunity can come, but there's still a certain amount of scaling that needs to take place in order for them to take full advantage of that opportunity that they have right now. So
that's right.
Yeah. So now will LAIO, I know LED will kind of help walk that through and help people figure that out along the way. Is that something that LAIO is going to be doing in the tech space part of it, or?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to think about right now, this is early. I mean, we're just in ideation phase, and we're talking to companies. We're trying to get a real sense for demand here. But I would love to build a plan where we have folks in the field that are automation, engineers and consultants that are, helping some of these folks to just figure out how to be more productive with automation with AI. I think, because it's kind of it's not this either or, to your point, right? It's not about you're going to kill all our jobs. The reality is, look, even if in 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 years that is the case, it doesn't matter. That train is coming, and we have to be prepared because it is globally competitive. And today, Tesla, if they're not going to get what they need from this family in St. Bernard, they will go somewhere else.
Yeah.
They do not care. They need speed and productivity and a final product that's delivered on time and all that kind of stuff. And so I promise, if we don't modernize our small businesses and help them be more globally competitive, this business will go to another state.
Yes.
And that's our threat. It's not the robots taking our jobs. It's Texas taking our jobs, and Mississippi taking our jobs. And so the train's coming. We just got to figure out how to leverage it to be more productive today. And look, I'm trying hard to pull the universities into this conversation to think about this from a long-term impact perspective and start to study, like, what is the real impact on our workforce going to be, because of automation and AI. But nobody knows the answer to that. But the one answer I do know is coming. Let's get involved. Let's try to figure out together, because doing nothing and, we're trying to pass some restrictive legislation saying you can't automate things or you can't have self-driving cars or whatever, that's bad. It's not going to work.
Right.
It's going to just continue to hold us back.
So, yeah.
So anyway, I'm passionate about this subject for sure.
No, this is cool, because I also we want to talk a little bit about that Louisiana Institute of Artificial Intelligence. I know it's a little bit down the road, but this is basically a center of excellence, right? So can you give me a little insight on what's your vision for that Louisiana Institute of Artificial Intelligence?
Yeah. So we really started cooking this up, right in the wake of the Meta announcement.
Right.
And you've seen it. I mean, you can't miss it, right? AI is just exploding. It's all everyone wants to either talk about. Every company's an AI company now, whether they are or they aren't. It's the investment is real. And look, I mean, it is transformative. I don't think that's in question at all. I think it absolutely is. But it is, the buzz is just unbelievable. And so we want to make sure that we did a couple things. One is that we capture some of the investment coming from Meta to do more things in the name of AI, but really at that application layer. The infrastructure is great, but this is infrastructure for Meta, right? I mean, they're building a data center that is going to run their Llama model and serve their customers. It'll create some good jobs, and certainly in a place that needs them. And the investment's real, and the impact to our state's economy will be real. But the real key and the real unlock to artificial intelligence in Louisiana is it's not more data centers. We'll get some more data centers. I'm confident of that. But we can't employ enough people in data centers to move the needle, right? Like we need to think bigger than that. And so what we need is to think about how can we use AI at the application layer to solve some of Louisiana's challenges.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's the interesting part. Our challenges are opportunities. We know that you name it, right? We got challenges on all fronts. We're losing our land. We emit a ton of carbon. We have challenges in education. We have challenges with poverty. We have challenges with health outcomes. All of these things. Dude, I mean, roads, infrastructure challenge. I mean, like, you name it, natural disasters. Like, all this stuff is real and it's impactful. And people think of this as what holds us back. But my perspective is, let's leverage these tools. Let's leverage we got some federal grant dollars we're going to use to try to think about how do we solve some of that stuff with artificial intelligence. Because I'm betting on that's the interesting piece. Because we're also not the only place that has poverty challenges or has coastal challenges or has healthcare challenges. The rest of the globe, a lot of spots have these same problems, but I think they're acute in Louisiana. It's in a tight geography. We can get some stuff done down here. And so if we can build some really cool, solutions with AI, and the companies that are building those with us, and then sell that stuff to the rest of the world to help solve some of those problems. That's the core impetus behind this. It's it's effectively, it's a center of excellence to go out and think about how do we solve some of our challenges with artificial intelligence. I'm not going to be doing the work. I work for the government. You don't want me doing anything. You just want me routing stuff. And so the goal is to work with startups that are building really cool things and solving stuff with AI here, and trying to get them. I want them. I want to be their customer effectively. I want them to go help us solve some of these problems in Louisiana. And we're going to use, there's a really interesting program, the BEAD program, and it was a federal broadband expansion program. Stands for broadband equity access deployment. And it was passed as a COVID relief package to really help expand broadband networks in hard to reach places, and also address some affordability challenges with broadband, because we were all living on Zooms. And so the state, all states got a chunk of money. Say Louisiana got $1.4 billion out of that program. we're not responsible for, we're, being LAIO and LED, we're not responsible for deploying those, in terms of building those networks. That's all, outsourced to telcos that are out there, like actually digging trenches and burying fiber and all that kind of stuff. But so whenever all that work was done, or at least the allocation of those, the construction phase of these new networks was done, there's a bunch of money left over to, the federal government basically said, do something interesting with this new internet. So you got a bunch of new internet lit up all over the place. Go out and do something interesting. So the governor basically split that big pot of money up amongst a handful of state agencies and said, okay, you tell us what your plan is going to be to do something interesting with these dollars. And I mean, this is a huge gift, right? Because I'm saying this is my love language. You're saying take some money and go do something cool with the internet in Louisiana, like heaven. So we're going to use some of those dollars to build a plan through the AI Institute on how do we do this? How do we solve these Louisiana problems leveraging AI? How do we attach, studies to it to figure out, is it working? But I want to do it all over the place. I'm gonna get in trouble because we're going to be doing this, in places that are even outside of our, normal operating, lanes. I want to help, K-12 education. I want to help the Department of Transportation and Development.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's really more of a whole of government approach. But yeah, so that's the Institute. It is early. We're gonna I'm actually doing some planning work the first week of May to sit down with some of the university folks and some of the government folks to figure out, like, all right, what, who's putting in what money to this thing and how can we put some shape to it a little bit so that this summer we can really hit the ground running with a few kind of cool programs.
So I saw your article and they call you the czar of innovation, right? And I'm thinking to that, I'm like, man, like, and then what, I mean, love the article. I just wish that he called you something else, because the thing that's really interesting here is while LAIO and the Center of Excellence and all that big vision is there, the thing I heard that the intention is, how do I take AI and take my folks who are in the middle, right? How do I get those businesses or take those businesses and start getting them up to where they need to be, or what needs to be done to help them get in the mix of all this opportunity that's taking place? And I think that even if you were there, for Super Bowl and just have seen this and have watched the rollout, you're excited about it because we know all this technology is coming to Louisiana. But to hear you say, in my first round of this, bro, I'm really just trying to figure out how can I help these businesses use AI, leverage AI to help these businesses get to where they need to go. And I think that's a big deal, and I think that's a special deal, especially for our community, because now it's like, the goal is not for it to take off. The goal is for us to figure out what the need is and kind of make sure that we're feeding that need as this progress and all this growing is taking place.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I'm the like take care of our own department.
Yeah.
I mean, truly, like, we know. Look, we know we got smart people. No one, there's no monopoly on smart people. It's just an opportunity challenge, right? Like, we got to continue to just make it an easier place to grow and work, and we got to support that. We got to support guys that are out in the field helping, small companies and startups. But yeah, I want to help these small businesses grow with AI and automation, and I want small Louisiana startups that are doing interesting things with AI to do that work for us.
Right.
That's the goal.
How does your 50 million Louisiana growth fund factor into what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, so those companies, this is not exclusive to AI, but those companies that are building solutions with AI, they need venture capital. They need seed capital, they need angel capital. I mean, they need all sorts of early stage investment in Louisiana. And so we what we've done is kind of carve out a chunk of that larger SSBCI pot of dollars that are just kind of unallocated yet. And we're going to say we're not going to wait for a bunch of organize private capital to come create a fund and take all of this stuff. If that happens, that's great. We're going to keep adding new funds. This year we hope to launch 3 or 4 more new funds that we're partners in Louisiana.
Nice.
But what we're going to do with the unallocated stuff is we're going to start just cutting ad hoc checks out of that, just to kind of keep the dollar. The name of the game here is get all these dollars flowing as quickly as we can. And so the other thing that we're trying to do with it is if you look at the market today for early stage capital, the funds that we're currently in are doing a good job. The money's starting to flow at a faster rate. They're looking at more deals, which means all of our ESOs are doing a better job of helping these companies become capital ready.
Mhm.
But their checks, they're topping out. Right, they're below $1 million. They're writing 250,000, to $750,000 checks. They're kind of roughly speaking.
Okay.
And so what we found is there needs to be one level up from that of check size, and so that's what we call this the growth fund, because it's really these kind of growth stage companies that they've got a product, it's out in the wild, there's revenue coming in because they're selling it, and they need $2 million now. They don't need $250,000. That's where companies were going sideways in our market, is that they weren't getting that level of investment here. And we think if we can really kind of come in and say our fund is meant to write those $1 million checks to $5 million checks, that's kind of the guardrails, then we can just unlock more success. We'll give those guys the boost they need if they can find capital locally. We know that once we get them out of that round and they start chasing the big bucks, they're going to have to find outside capital. I mean, we can't fund at all levels here, but the more successful we can make them before they have to go for outside capital, the more likely they'll succeed. So that's the growth fund. We should be ready. In fact, I've got one of the contracts in my inbox right now, if I can get to signing the thing. But we should be ready to start writing checks, before the end of this quarter, from that fund. That's the goal, and just continue to work with the partners that are out in the wild, funding these companies now, because they might get to a point where they say, look, I'm not comfortable going to that next stage. I can get them this $500,000 check, but handing them off, to the growth fund for that $1.5 million check. That's the goal.
So we have people who are founders who are here. They're, we see them. We go out to all our meetups, or be that New Society, CAC, wherever we go. Mm-hmm. We see a lot of our founders that are here. There are people who want to come home, and then there are people who are residents here in that 9th to 12th grade phase, is just trying to figure out what's going to be there for me, right?
Yeah.
So from that technology space, man, what would be some of your advice for just making the most of the opportunities that are available right now? And based on the direction of where you're kind of going with this, what are some of the things that they can look to Louisiana in regards to supporting either their AI journey as far as learning, or their AI journey as far as a founder, or someone who wants to come back home, or just in any of those, how, from your space, what would be the advice that you would have for those people in regards to technology and coming back to Louisiana? Yeah,
that's a great question. Man, it's an exciting time. It's an exciting time to jump in and build a startup. Certainly a technology-enabled startup. And it is in Louisiana for a bunch of reasons. So I believe in all these things I'm about to say, and I think they all kind of work together, right? Is that I think the next wave of startups, they're going to be less interested in solving Google's SEO problems, right? Like how can I be a good ad tech company? I mean, those are the easy. This is like John Atkinson thing. I'm gonna mess this up, but those easy problems are kind of solved, right? I think what's interesting, certainly to a lot of founders today, is solving some of these big problems, right? And Louisiana is a living laboratory for some of those big problems. And I mean that optimistically speaking, right? So come here and help us solve. Come home, help us solve some of those big challenges. And what you have today that you didn't have, even pre-pandemic, is an ecosystem and a community of support, You've got coaching now that didn't exist pre-pandemic. You've got coaching that might have existed pre-pandemic, but they've just gotten better at it. I mean, the fact that and look, I'm giving a nod to both OHub and like Idea Village and and others that like Idea Villages continue to improve every year. You guys showing up is a big deal, and bringing the lessons you learn from bigger markets that are further ahead than ours, that matters a lot. So the fact that you can come now, you can solve real problems in Louisiana. You have a community of coaches that can help you put some shape to your idea and get you prepared to launch that thing. And the capital's better. Not perfect. It's not perfect. We got a lot of work to do there, but it's available. People are writing checks to startups now. I mean, we're in 7 funds today. The last time we tried this, we were in 2.
Oh, wow.
And so the fact that like we're seeing growth and we got a long way to go, but the reality is it's come a long way, and there's a really strong community of support. And it's also what always blows me away. In New Orleans, I find this is even more unique than the rest of parts of the state. When you go to an ecosystem event, man, not only people there, the energy's real, but people from like all different corners of the city. You got the hospitals showing up. You got all the universities showing up, right?
Yeah.
You got all the various support organizations and all the venture capital guys and the economic development
Incubators and
organizations.
accelerators, everybody. Somebody from each one is going to be around.
Totally.
Yeah.
I mean, you got like commercial real estate brokers showing up. I mean, it's the people come, and so that community is very real. And the level of sophistication is better and better and better every year. And their ability to help, you launch your company. And then so all of that is colliding with the fact that like it's just easier to build stuff today. And it's getting easier, certainly on the software side. I mean, the ability for someone who doesn't have a 4-year computer science degree to make something out of to make a software product is just exponentially easier than it was even a year ago. And so the amount of tools that you can leverage to build something without being an engineer is just getting better every day. So don't I mean, look, school's important. I'm not telling people they don't need to go to school and become engineers, but the reality is don't let that hold you back. Like you can start making stuff today, and there's a community that's going to help you find that product market fit, and someone's going to help you, find that funding. So now is the time to solve interesting problems. You got a big community, and you can solve some of those problems without being a computer science ninja, right? Frankly. So like there's no better time than now to get going.
Yeah. I think that the part, and I want to kind of close this out right there, man. The reason to come home, the reason to stay home, and for companies that are I think one of the things that you said was really cool was, hey man, we have problems here that are ready to be solved. And not only that, I think it's important for people to understand that, people do see me out a lot, but I purposely test our ecosystem by trying to trying to see as many people as I can, because I'm a firm believer that it's just like Mardi Gras, right? If I walk down the street, I should be able to stop at this spot. Somebody's going to have some really good food. Somebody's going to have a couple of drinks. Somebody's going to have this. Somebody's going to have that.
Yep.
And we're so used to that, right? Leaning in on that makes it easy. And I think that the one thing that I want our ecosystem and the folks that see this podcast to understand is like, I will say that for my 2 years while I've been here, LED, I've seen you guys out in the streets. I think I run into Robbie Abood a lot. I see Stephanie Hartman. Stephanie, she does the she does a lot of procurement stuff.
I'm like, fast fact real quick on Stephanie Hartman. I taught her when she was in high school at that school I used to teach at. That's how long I've been working with Stephanie Hartman.
Wow.
She was 15 years old. That's how old I am too. Man,
Yeah.
she was my student when she was like 15, 16 years old, a long time ago.
And so we just hung out. Is it I want to say, I don't mess it up. Mandy, she works workforce development. Who leads the workforce development side?
Yeah, Chelsea does Fast Start. Yep.
Yeah. So a lot of those guys that came out to our meetings, and so the access is real. These guys are floating around inside of our ecosystem meetups, which is real. So definitely, man, bring your problems, anything that you believe that you have a passion to solve. Even if you come and ask me, man, we'll drop it in the email and we'll get it to somebody who would definitely will be interested in listening to the problem that you want to solve. But at this moment, man, we ran out of time. We could keep this going and going. We may have to get you on a little bit later on in the fall or something, but really do appreciate you taking the time, Josh, man. Thank you for coming on the show. And we look forward to connecting with you guys next month on E2.
Man, thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it, Leroy.
Thank you, bro.